Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Don't worry.
Nothing like, oh, there you are. So we can stay together.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Woodley Town Council Strategy and Resources Committee, being held on the 13th of June 2023. Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded, with recordings streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. By virtue of attending the meeting, you consent to having your image and audio recorded for this purpose. If you do not wish for your image and audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. For those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if you hear a fire alarm, please head through the nearest fire exit excuse me, and congregate at the fire assembly points outside the open centre at the front of Woodford Park. So first item on the agenda for this evening is for the appointment of a chairman and vice chairman for the municipal year. Could I ask for nominations for chairperson?
I propose Keith Baker.
Okay, and do we have a seconder for that? Okay, and are there any other nominations? No other nominations. So can we take a vote on that, please?
For 7-4. Any against? None against. Any abstentions? That's everyone.
Okay. Very Yep.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to appoint a vice chairman. I would like to propose Alice Swaddle. Do I have a seconder? Do we have any other nominees at all? No. So we'll proceed to the vote, please. All those in favour of Alison? All those against?
None against.
And abstain.
2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Moving swiftly on. Apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, we have one apology from Councillor Swaddle.
Are there? I think that's the only person who's missing, isn't it? Moving on to agenda item 3. Do any of you have to declare an interest to relate to any other business? No. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on 18th of April to approve the minutes of the Strategy and Resources Committee and that they be signed by the chairman as a correct record. Can we go straight to the vote on that one? All those in favour, please show. All those against?
None against.
And the third one, abstain, please.
3 abstentions.
Okay, is that approved? Okay, sign those later. Moving on to the finance, budgetary control, report number SR 1123, page 5. I will hand you over to our esteemed Deputy Town Clerk.
Thank you. Just to note, you've got a new sheet in front of you with some red. There was an error in the report printed with the agenda, which was very helpfully pointed out by Councillor Kennedy, actually. So that was helpful to know in advance. The differences on there are highlighted in red. Basically, on the agenda, the central costs figure under expenditure was incorrect, which obviously made the percentage figure incorrect. Likewise, the section identified as grants had an incorrect figure in, which was affecting the rest of the figures. that's been rectified, and just as a point to note, we're changing the format of that very slightly to make it clearer as to what those items are, where it says grants in section 137. There's a couple of things lumped in together historically there, which will be clearer to be separated out, which will make it make sense a little bit more transparent. In terms of the numbers themselves, obviously it's very early in the year. They're the right way around with although expenditure is tracking slightly above that period in the month. That's due to a couple of things. For example, the capital projects line where the 45k gets spent at the start of the year, it goes into the budget, so that shows at 100%. And there are a few other things that are slightly over annual insurance premiums that come out at the start of the year, and affiliation fees and things of that kind, but it's where we would expect it to be. And likewise with income under central costs, although there's a relatively small amount, there's copier income and interest, but more interestingly, I think the Oakwood Centre income is on track for this point in the year. So if there's any questions?
Okay, just before I take questions, can you just, because we've got new members here, could you just clarify, I know you're going to change it, what section 137 is, and
Right,
also
yeah.
the grants here are the large grants, not
Yeah,
the
so
personal grants.
what's actually in there at the moment is, perhaps confusingly, is the Woodley Town Centre partnership allocation and the £3,000 against the grants, which sits under strategy and resources, which is what's making up that 28,000. Those shouldn't really be in together. They were historically for when the LTCMI was considered a grant. They got put in with those other ones, but it'd be more helpful to split those out.
And the grants, are they the £250 ones, the individual ones?
Yes.
Or is it's those?
Yeah.
It's not the big ones. Okay. Any questions of Kevin at all? Nope. Okay, so we need to vote to receive those. All those in favour, please show. Okay. We don't need to vote. Okie dokie.
Oh, sorry, actually, sorry, I know it's too late. Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Democratic costs, 100,000, would you? 100,000 is quite low, isn't it? Over the year. What are they?
So there's costs in there for the all-out election. Basically, it's election costs.
All right, okay. So why is it? Oh, sorry, I'm just reading it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or not? All right, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the payments. And it's your favourite section. I'll explain to the newcomers. Anne is like a rock filer when it looks at pages and pages of information like this. So, are there any questions or comments?
Okay.
But hang on first.
Sorry.
Beth.
Can I comment while I'm sorting her list out, that it may be more efficient rather than her bringing them up individually at this meeting, to save time, she mails them in beforehand.
Is that possible?
No, because the public see me asking questions here, but they won't see me asking questions by email. So I don't find that satisfactory, no.
Okay. It's down to individuals. Right.
Okay, thank you. On page 9, so it's a cost incurred in May. It has about 6 from the top. AJGIBL GBP client NST account. Oh, so what's that insurance for?
That was an adjustment on the insurance premium in respect of building valuations. We had it was recommended that we had them revalued so that the premiums, so that the cover rather matched the building value. But the timing it wasn't possible before the insurance kicked in at the start of April.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Well, yeah, I don't really have much else actually. On page 10, under the clerk's interest, some of the grants have come out of the clerk's interest account. I don't really understand actually. Why have they come out of that account, not the other one?
Sometimes the impressed account is helpful if there's a timing issue for something. Historically, those grants have come from
Sorry.
it still gets signed off so that the impressed account payments go to the councillors that sign off the checks and other payments. So it's authorised in the same way.
Juliet?
Just a bit of clarification, on page 9, 213, page 2, Les Mills Fitness UK, the body balance coaching. Why did we buy somebody in?
I think that's a license to use it's a branding. So the Les Mills license, which is a kind of a package and means we can sell it really easily.
Right, so we've got somebody to do that, we
Yeah.
don't need to train somebody else to do it,
No, I
it's
think
just a license to do it.
License fee to use
Thank
it.
you.
Robert, thank you, Chairman. One is a comment and one is a question. My comment is I agree entirely with what Beth said. I think questions relating to this report would be better emailed in advance, and then the officials will have time to correlate any answers so we are best informed, and then there's no reason why you can't work down your list of email questions, ask your question, then the comments and replies can come back, where then we will then be a much more slick, I can't even say it now, a slicker performance for our constituents to see us in action, is my personal opinion on that. Now I come to my question. It is directly to Deputy Clerk, really, I suppose. No, through the chair, behave, Robert. So we pay these bills, we pay for refuse collection, we pay for toilet facilities and various things. How often do we go out and look for the best possible price to make sure that we are having the best value for money and the best service for that money?
So it varies depending on value. There's some requirements for things that would have to go out to tender if they're over the procurement value. So, for example, things like the larger capital works or contracts that are going to go over that value. More recently, we've had things like the waste contract, which has gone out. That was only quoted because it was actually under the threshold. We don't have lengthy contracts. The maximum would normally be 5 years. We tend to go for 3 years on most of them, so we can kind of test the water again at the end of that period. With other things, a bit less so. So supplies for paper and things like that, we tend to test periodically and find the best deal we can. Sometimes we're just buying bits from other places because they're the cheapest we can get, or it's online or whatever. To try and keep on the price. So there's a variation.
Thank you. And have you got any other questions?
No, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, this one we do have to approve. So all those in favour of those payments, please show.
Everyone for.
Thank you very much. And then the PSDF funds. Kevin?
Yeah, so just a note on that's page 11. So it's just to note the total there that's in the fund, basically waiting for us to be able, for councillors who are new to the council. This is the value that used to be in our investments portfolio in order to pay off the capital loan on this building. When mature, we had enough money to do that. Obviously, we didn't need to risk it anymore, so we came out and went to the CCLA as a secure place until the loan was due for repayment. It wasn't worth repaying early because there's charges attached to that, so that money is sitting there earning us a nice bit of interest in the meantime.
That sounds over 2 million that's sitting there. And
Could you just remind us when the loan comes, matures?
Yeah, there's two. So one's 2025 and one's 2026. I'm fairly sure.
I thought it was a year earlier than that, because otherwise it's then into the next. Anyway,
I can check and
could you Since this is all about that loan, could you add on the paper that,
Yeah.
that it's always there, we know it?
How much is the loan? How much is the balance to pay off?
It's like 2.3 million, isn't it? 2.4, something, it's 2.3, 2.4 million.
So we've got,
No, this is
No.
interest.
So it's 2 million is the loan total.
okay, so we've got more than enough.
So yes, with everything else is interest on top of that.
Excellent, good.
Right, so that was to note, wasn't it? Item 6. Oakwood Centre income update. Kevin?
Yeah. So just to note, the bookings and room hire there. In section A, which is at 26.6%. So anticipated budget. The bit to look at is probably the two charts, which are there on pages 12 and 13, where you can see, obviously it's very early in the year, but room hire is tracking slightly above, catering slightly below at this point. But obviously that makes a lot more sense as we get into the year. We can see where it's actually going.
Anne?
Yes. So how do those, because there isn't a curve for the income before the pandemic on the charts. Could you just remind us how they compare to that?
It was getting a bit
Oh,
cumbersome in terms of the amount of years that are included on the chart.
I think we agreed last time to do 3 years on the chart, didn't we?
Yes, it's a lot of information if you go
But you've
beyond.
got 3 years.
Verbally,
Oh, sorry.
how are we doing?
I'd have to go back and check on the numbers in terms of here, and room hire is doing well. I think catering was still tracking a bit below.
okay, thank you.
So could you dig that out and then send it to?
Yeah.
Councillors on the committee? Any other questions on it at all? Note. We now move on to item 7. You do have this, which is the standing orders relating to recommendations. What I'd like to do is be flexible, but let's not overcook it. Let's try and be aware of other people who might want to speak, etc. on multiple times. So it's there. I don't intend to do that chapter and verse at this moment in time, but I may well, if it starts getting unruly, pull it back. Okay. So, Kevin.
Thank you. If I can summarise the report here and the purpose. In the background, which sets out the current situation. Task and Finish Group was set up to develop a tender document and service level agreement, go out to tender for the purpose of making a recommendation to this committee on the appointment of a provider under service level agreement. The group developed those documents and had informal meetings with organisations who had expressed an interest in potentially providing those, so that would inform the document itself to make sure we were hitting the mark with it. When we came to it, unfortunately, no tenders were submitted, and so ultimately, the Task and Finish Group was unable to achieve that task of making a recommendation of appointment of the provider. At the last meeting of the Task and Finish Group, which was on 17th of April, which is the notes on page 16, the group discussed the possibility of making the funds that are budgeted in 2023-24 financial year available to other organisations providing services for young people in Woodley outside of the service level agreement, so potentially under some kind of grant support. Essentially, in order to achieve that, the idea would be to put that money into an earmarked reserve so it doesn't disappear at the end of the year if we haven't spent it, which is essentially what happened last year. We got to the end of the financial year, we didn't have a plan or anything in place, so that money went back into the reserve. There's a recommendation from that report to do that, for that funding in this year, which is £27,000 to be placed into an earmarked reserve and made available to organisations be able to put it to use. The principle of that is that the criteria for those grants would be considered by the Leisure Services Committee. So if this committee was minded to do that in terms of putting that funding into an earmarked reserve, that would then move back to Leisure Services to consider the criteria for that, how the grants would work. The other recommendation there is for this committee to consider whether appointment of a provider under a service level agreement is considered achievable or not in the foreseeable future, which is obviously depends on whether that task and finish group would continue or not, if it's unable to complete that task. There's quite a lot there, so if there are any questions.
Just before I throw it open, I'd like to, somebody who's been involved in this, as others have, for a very long time. This all started, again, for our newcomers, in 2019. We had a long history of a service level agreement with the organisation called Jack, just around the corner, who, from my perspective, and I think others, did an amazing job, an excellent job. But someone, a new councillor who's not here, quite rightly pulled the council up because they were issuing this SLA at quite a sizable sum, at least in our terms, without going through the legal process of tendering. So we, or the town council then, was open to potential accusations of bias, why aren't we looking at other people, etc., etc. So 2019, when that SLA finished, we kicked off the process to try and find out what should be in that tender document, because nobody had an idea. We got like 20 different ideas, which some would have cost millions to do, etc. So the task and finish group was set up to help define what should be in that tender document. They took soundings from organisations like Jack and others about what should be in that tender document. That then spawned a start of the process, which is called expressions of interest, EOI, and that's just putting a feeler out there. Who's interested? We're going to be doing this tender, and you got 4 or 5, or probably not as many.
No, there were
Three.
Three
Came back, and then the task and finish group got those 3 individually and came in to talk to them to help refine the tender document, with a view that if they had influence, maybe they might tender. So the tender went out. No one responded. No one. So that brings us right up to where we are here. The task and finish group have worked, I think, extremely hard on an amazingly difficult subject, of trying to develop something that is for what I call the hard to reach youth. The ones who won't go to the youth club, the ones that don't want to go and play football, the ones who don't want to do anything that most youth, and they have a problem, right? So the last meeting, they came up, I thought, with an eminent suggestion. So I think, my personal view, but it will be down to this committee, that the task and finish current task and finish working group has gone as far as they can. And I actually personally, I think it's a good solution, at least for this coming year, which is one of their recommendations. So to me, the task and finish working group has finished. It's done its job, that particular job, and we should disband it. So obviously I fully support that recommendation number 4. Now, recommendation 2 is the shifting of the funds into a grant-based system, which basically, I think we have to do something. We can't wait another year and have the end of this fiscal year, the money goes straight back into general reserves. I think we will all have done a massive disservice to our youth. So the concept of a ring-fenced grant-based system is very appealing to me. This can be open to any organisation. Jack could apply, ARC could apply, an individual parent could apply. So if they've got a child who needs to go, I don't know, on a residential course or something like that, and they can't potentially afford all of it, they could apply for a grant, do it. So you've got that whole spectrum, massive amount of flexibility, which frankly you wouldn't have under a single SLA, if a single organisation, if you could get one to actually respond. What I also propose, which this will be new to you, is that the Community Youth Partnership, which is another group under the Leisure Services, they have a grant of £3,000 available for youth to draw down. You can use once in 6 years, 7 years, something like that. Another £3,000 that is rolling over. So what I would suggest, if this committee agrees that the grant system is a way forward, we put the 3K with the 27K, gives us 30K. And I think with a suitable promotion and contacts, etc., we will use that 30K. So if you agree with that recommendation, then the big £64,000 question is, how do we manage the grants? How do we make sure that the grants are going to the right organisations and they're going to do the work? I can't give you the answers. I don't think any of you can give the answers here. You have ideas. So that's where the suggestion that the Leisure Services Committee take that on as a task. They could set up a new task and finish working group, a subcommittee. They can debate it in the Leisure Services rather than anything else. But down to them to come up with a set of criteria that can be used to assess any grant application. And that then those applications would come through to this committee, because this is a committee that effectively sanctions payments simplistically. And the suggestion is that every Leisure Service Committee can make recommendations. Other grants is yearly, and if you miss your slot, you miss it. Leisure Services meet 4 times a year, so it would be 4 times a year, and Strategy and Resources a week later. So you could go from a approval or recommendation of a grant through to actually receiving the grant in a matter of a couple of weeks. So that's my view. I'll throw it open to you guys if you've got any questions or comments. Let's take questions to clarify. Mike.
Questions for clarification. Does the council have general power of competence?
No.
In which case, Chairman, I have to correct you, because the council is unable to make grants to individual parents. Section 137 is Section 137 of the Local Government Act 1972, enables the council to make payments where it doesn't have a specific power in law, provided it is of benefit to some or all of the residents of the town. I would argue that a grant to one individual is of not benefit to some or all of the residents of the town.
That's going to be very interesting, because we do that on a regular basis to sportsmen. I think that's a technical thing that you know because of your background.
Yes.
I think what we need to do is take that offline, and you need to follow that up, because if that is true, and this council has been breaking the law probably for the last 50 years. So, yeah,
I've just, this isn't the comment I wanted to make. I was going to come back to what Mike just said. Fascinating stuff. I didn't know this. But if you're benefiting one person and that person improves, so a sportsman, for example, and that person goes off and wins a gold medal at the Olympic Games for chucking a javelin, then that has improved the town. I would counter argue, and I would think that could be our way around breaking that law. I think.
well, let's wait until we get a report back from the deputy town
Just to
clerk.
give another point.
No. Julia, sorry.
You go.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, I am very sad and disappointed on behalf of our young people that we have allowed an individual member to force out a youth group who are working successfully with our young people for many years in the most difficult 3 years they've experienced through COVID. I can tell you from working with one of our secondary schools that the mental health of young people these days is not good. We have art that supports us, but they are only able to take some of the worst cases. And so we have a lot of ordinary young people who have and are suffering because of the state of the world through COVID, and that this council had withdrawn because of the action of one member. And I know what we've been through, the youth work that was supporting them and damaged the relationship with that group. And I think Kay will agree with me, because Kay and I were very involved in setting up the work with Jack.
But
6 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
but I 1,000% agree with you. But that councillor who is no longer here, I must defend that what he raised was right.
Absolutely.
You know, the way he did it, I thought was inappropriate, and he continued was inappropriate. But he's gone.
And I know we are where we are.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the young people that are going through the system now, I think we need something to provide them with something that is strong, that isn't a one-off that will last a year, for what a grant was, unless it's something specific like throwing the javelin, but that emotional support that they need now in what for them has been and is a very difficult world. And I don't know how we do that. I don't have the answers, but I know in my heart I see these young people in schools who are struggling, and there is nothing for them. CAMS is underfunded, understaffed, and as much use as a chocolate fire dog in lots of cases.
So I would agree with you. We have, this is my own personal view, we have two courses of action we can take. One is we continue as we are, still struggling to find out what the SLA is going to be. And I can guarantee in 12 months' time that money's going back in general reserves. The other route is actually find a mechanism, which is what the grant-based system will do, to provide money through to those organisations, which can include Jack. No, and we're not talking about £250 each here. It's a sizable sum, and whatever the criteria is, we'll decide that. At the same time of doing that, Leisure Services could open up that whole can of worms again and try and find a way forward. But if we go down that track, we're running things in parallel. I just don't want us to say that's our only route. Thank you for the money, etc.
So
Julia.
that would be my preference. I don't disagree with doing this for a year because it gives something out for a year. But I think we've got a new bunch of councillors. I think the appetite is different. And this is not beyond the wit of man to do this. It really isn't. I think we task Leisure Services with going away and really trying to find a sustainable solution for this. for next year. But I think this year it's too late in the day to do anything meaningful that has had any sort of evidence base. So I think the grant system is a really sensible way of doing it. I think we really need to get the schools involved, because there's absolutely nothing to say that some of those schools would like to provide something, a bit of provision, if they had some money to do it. And I don't think they've ever had that opportunity. So I think we need to ask them. But, you know, when we're going to publicise it, let's be very clear what the criteria is. And let's be very clear who can nominate. So, you know, if that is councillors, if that is general public, if that is schools, what is the criteria? What is the weighting of that criteria? And who is going to assess those? Because we need to be completely transparent. Because if we're giving large amounts of money to small groups, it's not who writes the best bid. It's where the need is. That would be my only caveat.
I agree. By the way, ARC, already the youth hub, are already providing youth services into schools. But as Beth eloquently put, they're constrained, they're all volunteers, they're already getting £5,000 a year from us.
But
they could get more.
If they put a bid in, they might want to train another 20 volunteers, and that's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Because as you say, you know, downstream, Rob, you said, you know, there's benefit, and there would be benefits training more volunteers as well. Wouldn't be going directly to the kids, but it would be benefit long term. So I think as long as we're clear what we're achieving.
Well, as you know, I've been part of the youth services for a long time, and I was on the task and finish working group. I would like to see the youth partnership involved as well, because they are the ones that deal with the youth. They know what they're talking about. I would very much like to actually talk with Jack and find out what their opinion is, because they again are the experts. We're not. I've had a lot to do with youth all the time I've been there, but you need people that are actually there on the ground. And we're not talking about children who are in youth clubs or already in this circle. We're talking about the ones that are actually left and they drop down and they're missed. And if they've got nobody to actually pick them up, they're the ones that suffer. And we're the ones that suffer in the end, because youth actually don't have a mute button, and they can be really awkward.
All those sorts of things, I think, is for the leisure services.
Yes, it should be with
decide. I personally would like to give them as much freedom and flexibility and not constrain them.
No.
And the community youth partnership is part of the leisure services. And
Yes, it's obviously I was on that task and finish group as well. And I was just, at the moment, the way things are phrased, I'm a bit concerned that the idea of obtaining youth services could fizzle out, because I'm not clear that leisure services have got a strong enough remit to be looking into it. So I would like to see leisure services definitely having a definite remit, ongoing remit to establish an SLA that will work. I would like to say that as regards the ITT that we did were putting out during the last year, I don't think we changed it enough from the previous one that had been in existence before the pandemic. And, you know, the possible providers were all sort of saying, you know, that's not what we need now. That's not what would work now. So I do think that, you know, there was more work that should have been done to try and significantly change the SLA that we were proposing, quite a bit more really. We had tried to introduce flexibility into it, but I don't think it was enough. And then the other thing I just wanted to say, but I mean, everybody's got thousands of ideas on this, is that in Early, there's a cycle maintenance workshop. It's at on the Maiden Early School premises. It's been going for a long time, and I think that is a facility which actually some disaffected youth will use. And I just think that sort of thing is very good. And I wondered if there's anything that we could coalesce around in Woodley that would attract youngsters. And I noticed at the carnival it was a very good BMX display, and I'd imagine we have got some BMX bikers in Woodley now because of the skate park and so on. So I wondered if there's something that some sort of service that we could provide that would actually attract some youth in.
so what you've just described is one of the core features, not necessarily the bike thing, of Jack's, I can never say it, rib off Centre. If you, is it Rehoboth? Thank you. If you've never been there, it is amazing. You will meet some amazing people. You'll meet some amazing children or youth who are in this category we're talking about, and you'll see how they are coming out of it through what they do in Rehoboth.
You meet some amazing horses.
Yeah,
And
so-
chickens.
I know, Jack, if you wanted to go up and visit, Jack would have you there with,
It's in Hurst.
Yeah.
It's
It's on the
by
way to
the
Binfield,
Ashridge, you know, the Ashridge, Arts Centre, yeah? It's on the left-hand side, just on from there. It's a fantastic place. They don't preach religion at you all the time. There is nothing like that. They are completely and utterly devoted to youth of any sort. I mean, I offered last time to take people. When I went there, I was the only one there. And I've been several times, and I really do think it's a fantastic organisation. And Sam himself, when he came to us 26 years ago, he wasn't a youth worker, was he?
No,
He was just
he was a
a
joiner.
carpenter, yes. And he came to us with this idea, and he's built it up from there. Fantastic person. And, you know, it's something that you should all see. So if we can arrange our meeting with him.
okay, and I've got you.
Yes, sir. So I just want to say that I know Rehoboth is really good, but it's not exactly what I meant. What I really meant was something more casual and really local that the young people could get to themselves. So it could be something casual, actually in Woodford Park, that was mobile, say. That's what I meant, something that the young people can get to themselves.
Jack has been doing that as well,
Yeah.
through their mobile vans for about 20 years.
Yes, but the young people are not hanging around the parks at night anymore. That's the point that they all kept making that point, and that is why we have to have a different service.
Anyway, can I draw this to a conclusion, because now we're beginning to do the leisure services. I was going to make an additional recommendation based on what you've said, is to add an additional recommendation, which is what I call the parallel, to be tasked to review and maybe establish the service level. I'll leave you guys to do the words, all right? Because that isn't actually spelt out here. What's spelt out here is the grant. If we also task them to say, and look at the bigger picture as well, that's a huge task for both of those, I can tell you now. But, you know, so they will have, is that okay with you, Anne? Is that satisfied? They will have the remit? Yeah? But they will definitely have to come up with something within a 6 to 9 month time frame. Otherwise, we're back into this whole process and the grant system will just roll over. Right, so is there any other comments? Sorry.
Okay, I was just going to say, I chaired a meeting of the Youth Services Working Group in April. We did it on Zoom, and we agreed wholeheartedly with what the task and finish group have said about setting up the grants. We were very lucky, though, on this Strategy and Resources Committee that we do have some members that are also on the Leisure Services Committee, and we can have a real good link and tenacious reviewing of any grants that come through. And I would like to say that we should now agree to this grant system, and because we've come up with some fantastic ideas, going back to Jacques, and once this is out in the public domain, I think our residents will come back with some really good ideas as well. Thank you.
Okay, right. So can I take all the recommendations on block, which is 4 plus the additional one? Is that okay? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Brilliant, and thank you. I think we've had equally an interesting debate, and I wish the leisure services all the luck in the world, because if the country can't sort out
We've got to check an end date on it, so it's urgent.
the criteria, definitely needs to be done as quickly as possible, but it has to be done properly.
Yeah.
So what would you like as a target date for the criteria to come out?
Christmas, end of the year.
End of the year?
Yeah, next meeting.
September.
There's two more weeks, one in September, one in November.
But there's only going to be one leisure before that.
Yeah, so November, that's the second meeting.
Okay, with everyone?
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
the work between meetings as well.
Well, if the leisure services decide to put up a working party, they can work, they can meet every day if they want to. That's down to them.
Mr. Chairman, just going to say, the Leisure Services Committee would want to put up a working party, but then it doesn't necessarily have to be just members of the Leisure
Agreed.
Services Committee within that group, and we can co-opt other councillors in.
And you were also perfectly at liberty to request people to come in, to give you. So, you know, my immediate thought would be Ark and Jack.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful that we don't get a reputation of favouring one over another. Otherwise we'll get into trouble. The other thing, also remember, if you're going to go down the SLA route, that will have to be a tender document, a tender, which is be fun. But
Sorry, one final thing. When we do these subcommittees, they tend to be on Zoom, and I think a committee such as this will be much better around the table in person.
that's down to
So we can bang.
that's down to the Leisure Services Committee, because they own that task and
They
completion,
can-
and it's down to them and the individuals. It may well be a hybrid.
Yeah.
Right.
This is what made it.
Good, thank you.
So thank you very much for that. So we'll move on. Another controversial. Are you ready? Woodley Town Centre Partnership. Right, so not yet. So we'll receive the report, page 18 of the Woodley Town Centre Partnership meeting. Are there any questions there at all? Some of us were there. Sorry, Anne.
Yes, yeah, one thing is, at page 19, proposing this, I've got one or two questions about this new, app. One is, I wondered if it would result in police officers being less in the local area because they feel they could rely on the app instead. Another thing is, it says there's a monthly fee of £95. Is that per shopkeeper?
No, that's for the total.
That's how?
Yeah, for all the people involved in it, if there were,
That's all together, it's not.
if there were
it's not
40 people involved, it would be split for 40, if there were 20 involved, it would be split for between 20, so it's not a great.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, I was afraid of.
No, that'll be the total for the scheme.
Oh, well, that's good. And what does it do that will be better than a WhatsApp? Do you know?
Mainly it will have the police engagement in it. The police don't like WhatsApp. There are lots of stories about the police. So they don't get involved in WhatsApp, but they are very, very supportive of this. But Matthew Barber came to our last meeting. Fully supporting it throughout the whole Thames Valley police area. I know he's had meetings with the directors of this, very keen on pushing it. So that's the first difference. It is got full police support. And the reason it's got full police support is GDPR compliance, which obviously WhatsApp isn't. So two key features of the disk that WhatsApp simply doesn't have. And that's kind of why they need to.
Oh, right, okay, thank you.
Can I just ask if, I don't really understand it, so who has access to this app? Is it just shopkeepers or is it the general public?
No, the members of the scheme. So it'll be administered. If, as I say, we've got 60 shops in the town, let's say half of them sign up to it. There'll be a closed group of those 30 people. They'll be able to share the information between themselves, but nobody else.
So what is the appetite amongst the shopkeepers?
Not very good, if I'm absolutely honest.
So I can't imagine it would float their boat.
No, it's a tough sell, really. We had a good meeting where we had 20 of the shops turn, which is a good meeting, and quite a few of the police were there, and we had the chief exec of DISC turn up, and quite a positive meeting, if I'm honest. And I kind of left feeling quite optimistic, but I think shopkeepers or shops generally are not really keen on a scheme like this as a standalone scheme. They would much rather it linked to something like CCTV. I'll come on to that in a minute, because that gives a much more rounded security scheme. But I think they also need to know that they've got full police support. And I think what they're saying to me is, look, doesn't matter what you've got, Ryan, whether it's disc or whether it's CCTV, if we can't stop people, if someone comes into, which is what the manager of Waitrose was saying to me, if someone comes in and picks them a bottle of vodka and walked out with it, I can't do anything about it. My company don't allow me to do anything about it. They just do it. And it's a little bit of, the Wild West. People that, decide to steal from shops, particularly that sort of level of, a bottle of vodka or relatively petty stuff, will simply walk away. And their frustration is only if they've got police around there and then will they be able to stop that sort of thing. So they're saying to me, look, mate, don't really answer the problem. Now, what I've been trying to convince them is, look, this will be a real help. If you were standing there, okay, probably unrealistic if there's some, real aggressive guy there taking a bottle of vodka to sort of take a picture of him, but it will help in some circumstances. In Boots, for example, some teenage girls taking makeup might be a different proposition to, a 6 foot guy, 6 foot 15 stone guy in Waitrose taking a bottle of vodka. So it won't solve every problem, but it will solve some, and that's the point I've been trying to make.
So they take a picture of the individual.
Can do, yeah.
Okay.
And then share it with other members of the group and with the police.
And what are the police going to do with that?
Nothing.
Well,
They don't know who it is. They will have gone by then.
Yeah.
And you've just pissed the person off that might well have a concealed weapon.
yeah, well, okay, it's not going to solve every problem.
I'm not sure it's going to solve any. That's what I'm trying to get at. I hope what's it going to do? I don't think it's going to do anything, is it? It's not going to deter people. It's not because I can take a picture of somebody shoplifting and send it to the police.
Yeah.
So it's no different. They're not going to do anything then and there, are they?
Yeah, I think what shopkeepers have found in particular with they've set up a WhatsApp group about a year ago.
Yeah.
There was a similar thing, but of course, because it hasn't got the police support, there are some concerns about it. But what it does allow shopkeepers to do is share information amongst themselves. So if they know of a known shoplifter in Waitrose, for example, they can share that fairly quickly. So at least
They
they can
not
go.
do that with the WhatsApp group.
Sorry?
That's what they do now.
They do that now, but the difficulty with it is it does run into some issues of, we don't know, there's no control over it, there's no GDPR control.
But it's encrypted. WhatsApp's encrypted end to end, so it's safe.
Oh, it's safe, but there's nothing to, if, for example, they decide to pick on, I don't know, a particular person, a particular ethnic group, for example, and just take and share pictures without any real evidence, I think that's kind of concerns the police quite a lot.
Well, it would concern me.
Well, it would concern everybody.
Perhaps they shouldn't be doing that.
No, they shouldn't, but that's what is happening at the moment, whereas the DIS system, at least would have some control over it, because the police would be able to say, you need to take this one down right now.
The trouble is though, the WhatsApp group, because it's free, everybody's on it.
Yeah.
I'm on it as leader of the town council, but everybody's on it because it's free. And I see the traffic that goes on there, as you do, because you're on it as well. Very rarely, if anything, these pictures are usually grainy, you can't see who it is, etc. It's more a textual thing. We just had 2 gypsies in, they've done or there's a guy in a black jacket, and blah, 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 blah. So I think potentially that it's being overplayed, the GDPR. With the DIS system, as you've just said, you're struggling to get people to sign up. That's because even at £95, it's going to maybe cost them a £5 or 10. No, can't get it. And it's a closed group. So every shop that doesn't sign up to it no longer has any information. So plus this overlying feeling that we all have, residents as well as shopkeepers, is that the police aren't going to do anything anyway. So why should I pay money or not? I'm not going to have access to information. I know police aren't going to do anything, whereas I've got a perfectly good WhatsApp group. Police still aren't going to do anything, but at least I can notify my fellow retailers to say, keep a watch open, this is what's happening.
So can I just come back? It sounds to me like we need to do a bit of education and training with the people that are using the WhatsApp group and put some strict criteria in post. Because actually it could be a very useful mechanism, couldn't it? But if you get a lot of superfluous traffic and, you know, maybe we don't take pictures of people, if they're grainy and crap, then it's a waste of time. But you know, have we actually, rather than just setting up a WhatsApp group, have we done a bit of OD with these people, a bit of, you know, sort of talking about how we're going to work with it and what the rules of engagement are and how do we manage equality and diversity when we're talking on WhatsApp? Because those are the issues I'm hearing.
Yeah, we could, I mean, we didn't set up the WhatsApp group, by the way, it was set up by the shop teams, which is kind of what we wanted really, we wanted that to own it, but yeah, that's something we could be done.
And that just might make it a little bit slicker, that's all. Because I think you've just said it yourself, they set it up themselves. If they set it up themselves, they want it, they clearly use it, it's perhaps just not being used properly. I'm not sure how this is going to, I mean, I'm not clear what the objectives of this are. Is it to reduce crime? Is it to improve communication? What are the actual objectives? Because I can't see that that particular system would do anything particularly for any of those objectives, unless I'm completely missing the point, and I might well be.
We talk about DISC.
Yes.
Can I suggest that, because I'll just take Kay as the last person, but I'd like to move on. But what I was going to suggest, Brian, is it's probably okay for us or the town council to facilitate such training, because that actually could be useful for councillors as well. You know, councillors are on WhatsApp group, they're posting on Facebook. You know, how many people actually realise don't put a picture of a car with the registration, for instance, because you're in deep doo-doo. So we could possibly facilitate that training. Do we not?
I need to look into where to get that from, but I guess
It's got to be a thing. There will be plenty of people out there doing it.
Good, yeah.
All right. Okay, sorry, Kay, you can have the last word.
The shops in Woodley are losing a lot of money by shoplifters. My husband actually saw two girls get 2 baskets full of cosmetics and things from Boots, must have been hundreds of pounds worth, actually walked out of the door with them. Nobody stopped them, obviously. They just went out, and apparently they've been doing that several times.
You know, Boots has got the answer to that now. My wife went
Oh,
down
no, I
there.
know they haven't got any cosmetics out.
And they've got bars now.
Yes.
So
You know,
you can't go and try your stuff.
it doesn't help with the other shops. You know, there are lots of shops that are now suffering from this and think it's something that's quite serious. And the police the presence just isn't inwardly most of the time.
But it amazed me that you said Waitrose just let it go. Did they not have security guards anymore? I'm sure they was. They have in London.
They don't have them at the moment. They tend to blow hot and cold. I mean, quite often they have like a roaming team. They go to the shops where the biggest problems. But as Kate says, shoplifting is becoming a bigger problem. It's a problem everywhere. Cost of living crisis, and all the rest of it is, and it's been getting worse actually since well before the cost of
Do we
living.
need to do a bit of a campaign of, you know, anti-shoplifting, we're watching you? Because they are watching you. You know, they've got a WhatsApp group, somebody is watching and they will communicate with each other. So is there something about raising a bit of awareness around, don't do it? Here?
So we've got Robert, and then we've got Najib.
Maybe I should declare an interest in this. I am a retired John Lewis partner. I spent 27 years working with John Lewis, and my wife is a 25-year partner, and she works at Waitrose in Woodley. They do stop people. If you take a bottle of vodka off the shelf and walk to the exit, they have mechanisms in place. I'm not going to tell you what they are because this is going live on YouTube. They do have security guards in the wine department predominantly, and that security guard does wear a body camera, because we are in a litigious society, so they have to have that for their own protection more than anything else. The shop has full CCTV, and they can cover every single square inch of that shop floor with it. It is all recorded 24/7. That information is shared with other retailers, and I have an interest in Boots because my nephew was the manager at Woodley, he's now manager at another branch. And again, they have systems in place to tackle particularly makeup and things like that. So I think with respect, we need to be careful, especially as I say, we're live on YouTube, to say that what retailers do or do not do as a security measure. And just nipped in there, one of the market traders was robbed on Saturday. Lovely lady, and she had a distraction burglary. So yeah, let's get CCTV in the precinct.
I'm going to move on to that.
Yeah.
Before that, Majid, you're definitely the last person.
I just want to respond to you. Just asked, are there any security persons in Waitrose? It was nearly, I think, 6-7 weeks ago, around 7 p.m. I was coming from Waitrose site, and one gentleman, he came out of Waitrose, and we both were walking side by side. He was walking very quickly. We went in front of Iceland, and then I felt that someone from behind was coming very fast. I looked, Waitrose security guard was coming at full speed. And when that guy, he saw Waitrose, when he started running. Now, difference is that that guy, I think he stole something from Waitrose. He was ready and fit for running. And Waitrose guy, he was wearing 3-piece suit. His tie was like this, and his shoes were not running at all. They were office shoes. So after 1 minute, he came back alone. And he said, he ran away, I can't catch him.
And there'll be lots of anecdotes like that. And I've spent 30 years with Boots, and I know all the kind of systems that we had in there. But we do know as well, if someone was determined to take something, they got away with it. And there was no stopping them, no matter what the system was. So sure, it will stop some people, but it won't stop some people either. So if people are determined to steal, they will do. And as I say, I've had enough experience in my time.
So if we can now move on to CCTV.
Yes. Okay, right. Yes, thank you. Right. Okay, so yeah, well, just I guess for the benefit of people who maybe don't know, the Woodley Town Centre Partnership I represent, are really three parts: Woodley Town Council, Working Borough Council, and the businesses, primarily the traders in Woodley Town Centre. And the funding we get comes pretty much in equal measure from those three separate entities. Purpose of the report today is to ask for £5,000 as a contribution to CCTV in the town centre. Now, you might think that's not a lot. A bespoke CCTV system would indeed be far more expensive than what I'm asking for. The proposal is that we build on the current WBC system that operates in their car parks and add 3 additional cameras in the town centre, which will give us pretty good coverage, really, because of the shape of the town centre, T-shape of it, effectively. It's quite easy to cover quite a lot of it with 3 cameras. Cost of that will be just over £15,000, 15,072. We've had 5,000 of that come from the Police Community Fund, which we applied for earlier in the year and got, but it still leaves us just over £10,000 short. I'm asking for £5,000. I think it's only fair that we ask our other partners for a contribution, and I have asked the retailers, and I'm hoping that Working the Borough Council chip in as well. If they are partners, they really should be at least considering a contribution. So that's why I've not asked for all the money. We haven't got all the money yet. I've not heard back from any of the other organisations at the moment, so we haven't got it. But I'm hoping that if we can say, look, Woodley Town Council put their best foot forward. Now, come on, it's your turn. I guess I'm relying on that sort of goodwill. Maybe that's naive, but that's what I'm hoping will happen. But just for clarification, the £5,000 that if we do get it is not going to be enough to fully cover it. There'll still be a gap of £5,000. I guess the background as to why we need it. I guess our main challenge, our main objective, our raison d'etre really is to maintain and improve the vitality of the town centre. You all know of the challenges that all the town centres are having at the moment. And to a degree, we're bucking the trend. If we look at shop vacancies, for example, we've got 1 vacancy out of 62. What's that? 2%, 3%. Very small amount. The average for the southeast is 10. The average nationwide is 14. So we are in a good position in terms of our occupancy, one empty shop, one more on the horizon to deliver, but it's still relatively low. But the danger is we get complacent. I think, well, everything's okay, and we're not. We're very, very vulnerable to other shops moving out. And we've had a little bit of a conversation about the amount of theft that goes on in shops. Theft from shops can be a deal breaker in terms of, do people stay in the town or move away, or indeed do we attract new retailers? Once a new shop starts hearing about some of the stories and some of the losses that other shops are having, it deters them. And we have got, I think, we're very vulnerable to some shops actually saying we cannot afford to trade in Woodley anymore because the amount of losses we get. And so we have to be seen within something like that. Having CCTV is not particularly innocent. I've been in towns for many, many years. And organisations like the Woodley Town Centre Partnership and town councils have blown hot and cold, I think it's fair to say, primarily because of funding that was there at the beginning, kind of drained away as the system got bedded in. The picture quality wasn't always good enough, and certainly not good enough to be used in court as evidence. Some of those issues have been addressed by new technology. The picture quality is far, far better now. We don't need the kind of resource to back them up anymore that we used to have. A control room with 20 screens and someone sitting there with a joystick and all that kind of stuff. That's all whole that you can have it now on your mobile phone. It's much more accessible. And so they have come down in price and are much more effective. And I guess the system that I'm proposing we add on is probably not a perfect system, but it's probably the best value we can get. I did try and get quotes from other companies, 3 other companies back earlier in the year. 2 didn't even turn up, they just weren't interested. The one that did turn up basically bothered giving a quote. When I rang them and said why, they suspect that they won't get anywhere with this one. They're saying that we're talking about digging up road, putting down and putting new posts in. I got the impression we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, you know. And so when I got told that this scheme is going to cost £15,000, I guess I thought this is far more, it sounds like far better value for money. I guess in terms of why it's important, as I said, keeping shops in the town centre and keeping shops vibrant in the town centre is of critical importance. We talk a lot about our events, a lot about our markets. A key driver of footfall in the town are the big shops, Waitrose, Boots, Iceland, the post office. They drive the vast majority. You know, people talk about the banks, but it's not as big as those key retailers. They drive it. We cannot afford to have them go out of town. And so I guess we need to be seen to be doing something to support. CCTV is the very minimum we can do. And I would suggest that we won't be seen to be doing everything to follow. There is. The other thing that landlords tell me is the first question that new tenants ask is, what security are in the town? And how committed are the local authority to security in the town? And how committed are they to cleanliness in the general upkeep of the town? They are key questions that tenants ask landlords before they come into the town. And they want to hear answers on them. And we have been quite lucky in that vacancies that we've had have been filled fairly quickly. The banks have been to Backbone and HSBC, which are big units that we thought might be empty for a long time, were filled relatively quickly. The unit that the Thames Hospice pulled out has recently been filled. But I think it's fair to say we're probably not getting the range and quality of retail that we would like. I guess doing something around CCTV will help that situation. So that's kind of it, really.
Okay, so can I just add something for information, Chair, just for members to know. Missing from the report there, which might be helpful in terms of funding and resource impact. What it doesn't say there is that a capital programme that's proposed to fund this currently has a carry forward from last year of just over £11,000 plus the £45,000 allocated in this year's budget. So there's £56,077 available in that budget. because the other capital programme projects haven't been considered, but apologies that information wasn't.
Robert,
Three-parter, yes, I agree fully behind this. How long is it going to take for Wokingham to say they will spend the money on it, so we can put our 5k to it? If it's really that important, can we put all 10k to get it in as soon as possible?
Just one quick question. We had CCTV in the town centre before. We took it out because it didn't stand up in court.
That's right.
If it doesn't stand up in court, there's no point to it. So is this good enough to stand up in court?
I'm told it is. I'm not, technically aware, but I'm told it is. I'm told by the guys that have been operating it in the car parks.
It's a deterrent, isn't it? Having it there is a deterrent.
As well as, but that's what we found
It
before.
is. It's both really. The deterrent is a very important factor. You're right, and it does offer a deterrent. It also does give the police some evidence to go on as well. They can use it to review situations as well. But yeah, you're right. It does need to be. That was always the problem with old systems. I'm told that the new technology and the new specification of the pictures they can get are far better and can be used in court.
but it also coincided with the introduction of body cams.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, if you're not there, a body cam doesn't work.
No.
But there's a Mike, then Juliet. And so Mike, go.
Three very quick points. One, support Robert. Say that if we are struggling for the extra 5,000, I would certainly advocate putting in the whole 10. What are the revenue implications going to be, and will they fall on the town council? The running costs of the extra cameras, and will signage go up? Because that's very important that we warn the public that you are being watched. CCTV is covered in the high street. So that's an important fact. And has that been considered?
Yeah. The signage, yes, that's included in it. The company that are doing a company called Chromavision. Well, it's NSL are the contractor, the subcontractor is Chromavision. They're the people that are going to be doing the work. But they know that they do these things in lots of towns. All that kind of stuff is included in the quote they're given. The only thing I would say is the quote was only for 30 days and that time is over, so we'd have to go back. I mean, they may have put it up, I don't know, but I can't imagine it's gone up a lot, but they did say 30 days, and I guess with inflation going as it is, people are probably reviewing things fairly regularly, so there is that to consider. But the cost of the signage is included in that.
Juliet?
So that sounds very cheap to me, and that worries me. And the fact that your due diligence has been limited by no other company coming back to you, I would suggest that you need to do a little bit more due diligence, at least get a demo from them. But are they the best? Do we need to spend 20 grand and get something much more fit for purpose? What it is, I know you say you think it's adequate, but I'm not sure. I don't feel assured that that's the best company to do this. And do we need to spend 5k, or do we need to spend 10, or do we need to spend a bit more? I'd like to really understand what that, without delaying it, because I agree we need to crack on with this because it's a jolly good idea. But let's not do it once and I have to redo it in a year's time when we realise it's crappy. Let's do it properly first time. Lots of signage, fit for purpose. Because if the shops have got CCT internally, we need that to be able to track people when they leave the shop, don't we? We need it to be as good as the stuff in the shops. Otherwise, it's pretty pointless.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just intuitively thought that a system that's already been introduced by Wokingham, who have clearly done the due diligence and got coached when they got that. It was only a year ago when they put it in. To build on that seems to me it's very much likely to be cheaper than any standalone system.
Have they done an evaluation of it? Are they happy with it? Is there a report somewhere that says this is absolutely fine, this is brilliant, in which case, fine.
Yeah.
They've done the due diligence for us. But I would just require a little bit of assurance.
Yeah,
that
that's their comment.
it's
I
good.
can get that, yes. Yeah, but verbally, and anecdotally, they're saying that, but I take it that yes, it would be better to have a proper report. They seem to be very happy.
And next, and then Majid.
Actually, I think, did you say that Woking Borough Council would then take on maintenance costs? Is your understanding, is that?
They weren't.
It's under a 3-year warranty, first of all, so no, it's 3 years, that's the first thing. We would have to, I mean, when I've spoken to Woking, they haven't even got round to talking about an SLA for the following 3 years yet, so they don't know what the cost is. So yeah, I mean, I found that quite honest, but that's what they told me. So they've got the 3-year warranty and it's kind of agreed for 3 years. Now, okay, fine. We know we're covered for any damage or any excess for 3 years. But yeah, we will need to know what we're committed to. I understand that. And certainly, you know, I was wanting to get that for tonight, but I'm not. But clearly there will be ongoing mistakes and maintenance.
I haven't finished. Just, you know, it says theft and antisocial behaviour have increased in the past 3 years. Is there a sort of figure for that?
I've not got any specific figures in terms of the amount of crime. But what I have got is what's happening in shops in terms of the amount of theft that's happening.
Right. So, could you give some idea, you know, how much that's gone up in the last 3 years?
They're talking generally in the region of 20 to 25%.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Now, it's anecdotal. It's very difficult for any store to sort of admit to that. But they are saying that it's getting worse. I have heard, you know, horror stores that you're talking about, £4,000 going out of shops at once. £4,000 a week being lost in other stores. That is pretty obvious to anybody that is unsustainable. And the finance departments of big stores are going to be saying, what are we doing staying in this town? If we're losing that amount of money.
Majid?
Oh, sorry, I did have another question. It's just that about, it says.
This is your last one.
Yeah, it is. The potential to link CCTV with other data gathering systems to give us a competitive advantage. What data protection would there be in place, for example, concerning face recognition, if you were sharing the data with a commercial company, say?
I was thinking there about the DISP system, about using that together with it. But also there are things like, one of the issues we do have is measuring footfall in the town. I quite often get asked by landlords, I quite often get asked by people who are coming to events, what's your footfall like? The honest answer is we don't really know very much. Even the shops don't have very much data. You'd expect them to have it. I know in my day with Boots, we seem to have, or we used to rely on transaction numbers, which gives a pretty accurate picture. But they seem to have gone a bit backwards with that, really. They don't seem to have the information that is available. That said, there are systems out there that we can now use CCTV to monitor how many people are coming in certain entrances. I was looking at some information today, for example, in Canterbury, town I used to work in, city I used to work in. They can tell you at any one time how many people are in the town centre live by just going on their website. So I know there's 5,147 people in Canterbury town city centre today. We haven't got anything like that. You know?
You won't get that from the 15.
No, you won't. You won't get that from the 15 grand system, admittedly. And Canterbury is a bigger city, but they've got financial challenges as well. They've managed to introduce a system like that. It's a much bigger system to cover as well, of course. But
going back to my point about face recognition,
please.
But it wasn't answered about the face recognition.
We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. Majid, please.
Here on page 1, there is a sentence. It is noted that the court is valid for only 30 days. So my first question is that, is it already approved or is it under consideration? And second one, in this court, is this only price court, or there is any description about equipment and later on about how that equipment will work? Is there any guarantee?
I've not got a lot of detail on that, no. What I know is that the cameras that they're proposing to introduce are exactly the same as the cameras that they've got in the car parks, which are good enough for doing the number plate recognition. So they are quite high quality cameras. That's all I do know. The guys that I spoke to were the guys that installed the cameras in the car park. We'll be using the same kit, effectively just adding cameras to that system. And in terms of, recognition, yeah, they are good enough for doing them, that recognition. So my assumption is that we're looking at full face.
Well, my point is not to pass that information. I think it's going too far to pass on face recognition information to an external company, if that's what is proposed
But
here.
face recognition and being able to see somebody's face are two different things.
Right.
Completely different things. Facial recognition will search a database and tell you who it is. Recognizing somebody's face is just you've got a clear picture. So they are two different, very different things. One is a civil liberties issue that you really want to think about. So I would suggest you don't even go near that.
Right.
The other is just having a decent camera, which is the heads to 15K comment.
Thank you, Julia. That's it. Yeah.
Can I just make a quick one on that? In the context of that, we would very much need a GDPR review and policy specific to that as enhancement, because it's far more CCTV than we deal with at the moment. So that would definitely need to be something picked up through that.
Yeah. So Majid, have you got some, have you got any more questions?
Yeah, just last one, I'm again asking that it is valid only for 30 days and you say that 15K is required. Suppose if you can't manage rest 5-1 in 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, it did say that in the quote. I mean, it was done on the 2nd of May, and it did say, yes, it's valid for 30 days. I need to go back and just check, where we are now. Yeah, that price changed.
Okay.
Can we come back to Anne? Sorry, I stopped you.
No, it's, Juliet's explained exactly what my issue is. Will you look into? It's down the road, isn't it? It's a speculation that you would pass the information on to other companies. But the point is that it wouldn't do. Well, I don't think it would do anyway. To pass on face recognition data that can be used for face recognition to external companies.
I think that's where the GDPR requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've all exhausted, I've got quite a few comments here. I wanted you to get first tips. So, antisocial behaviour, working at Borough Council now has got, as I understand it, a special task force set up, employed people, and they're being quite successful, particularly on people doing donuts in car parks. So you need to use things that are already there. So I wouldn't classify this for antisocial behaviour. We should need to tap into that. And if you don't know about it, you need to get to know the manager, etc. Okay. Secondly, the footfall. It's unfortunate when up to about 5 or 6 years ago, there was regular data available to councillors for car parks. You knew exactly how many tickets were sold in every single car park. Not only how many tickets, but how many 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. So you could actually, and I used to do it, I've got a big spreadsheet. You could actually do a major analysis of you can do approximation. Yes. If somebody parks up, you can say they're part of the footfall, right? So you can do a good evaluation of footfall. You can get good evaluation of how long they stayed, because that's equally important, etc. That disappeared, and despite a lot of pressure, it hasn't come back. I believe it's likely to come back in the next 3 years, which is ridiculous because I don't know how you can run a business if you don't know that data. So that's just two things. If you are just trying to get a deterrent, it is it's quite conceivable to just put up signs. Do you know how many speed signs saying speed cameras where there is absolutely no speed cameras? And I don't mean no speed cameras in the box. There's no box. So that's a potential.
And dummy cameras to support that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Dummy, which doesn't cost 15,000.
No.
And Robert, you might be able to answer this. Do the retail shops, I know they have CCTV inside, do any of them actually have CCTV addressing their entrances outside? So if they have, clearly you wouldn't want to put another CCTV there. These are just things for you to take away. Yeah. I am very, very edgy for us to vote this through at the moment because I want to see a proper business case. I want to see the costs you've talked about. We've talked about maintenance, and you sort of best will in the world. Yeah, I think that well, maybe possibly. I want to see something in writing that Woking Borough Council aren't going to suddenly turn around and say, we've been hosting your 3 cameras for the last year free of charge. Guess what? You're now paying £50,000 a year for them. Because I don't trust any council, not just Woking Borough, right? So that's where the business case, and that's something you can't knock up in a couple of days. And my final one is, I am a little bit disappointed. Last year, in anticipation of some financial or potential financial issues coming into this year, the town council awarded on a contingency basis an extra £10,000, right? I note here, you've now actually allocated that into the current financial year. That's not using a contingency. If you hadn't done that, this contingency could be funding, right? So we're now giving you, and that contingency in the next budget, I don't want to prejudge things, but my expectations ain't going to be there.
No.
So you're back to 15K. And I know you and I have talked about other budget issues, okay, and I don't want to talk about those here, but I just want to raise that, we're now asking for an extra 5K and 10K. So that's now £35,000 a year. And we need much more checks and balances on that. If we paid for the 10,000, for instance, then I think probably it'd have to be a town council thing, not a town centre partnership thing, because the town council is more stable. It's long term. You and I have talked about what the future of the town centre partnership, because of the funding model, bids, etc. In 5 years' time, it might not be there. So this is all needs to be part of the business case. What the recommendation is, we would like the town council to take it on as a full-blown service to the community, rather than being owned or driven. But we need you, obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to answer any of those, but if you can take those away, my proposal is we don't go gung-ho on this yet. There's a lot of questions to be answered. The quicker you can get those answers, particularly the business case, because I think that, to me, that's critical. That's the one thing that we need to have, answering all these questions. And we can always convene another meeting. We can do it by email, we can do it by Teams. If we need to move quickly, we can. So what's the general consensus of that way forward?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Brad, it's not what you wanted.
No, well, just one thing, if I can clarify, the extra £10,000 that you, right, we were giving it to contingency. It was put in the budget that was presented to the committee back in the April meeting, and it's quite clear that it was planned to be spent this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, you go regularly, I go regularly. Something that we missed. Right.
So am I hearing you right, Chairman? You're deferring this to the next meeting?
I'm deferring it till we get at least a business case. We cannot commit the sorts of money we're talking about here on top of the money we've already committed without all these. There's so many open questions.
Next meeting.
Yeah, as I say, we can have an extra meeting. We could do it by Teams. We could do it.
As soon as you're ready, we can.
Yes, let's get together.
We'll come back and I would suggest you move it through these guys to check, because the last thing you want to do is come in business case and say, and we rip it apart. You don't want that.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting you put it through these guys, because I think that certainly Kevin is sort of in our heads. He knows how we think and operate generally. You all okay with that? Yeah. You don't need to stay. Well, you've got a long way to go, haven't you? You're on your bike.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you anyway. No, that's fine.
Right. Project schedule, item 9, page 26. Kevin.
Thank you. Just to note, most of the current funded capital projects have been completed, so they've come off this list from last time. There's 2 remaining on there to be completed through the summer. We are preparing information for new capital projects, fund from capital programme. That has been a bit delayed in this year due to capacity issues and the amount of work the amenities managers had on as well. We are working on that to get something back to committee as soon as possible.
So without actually having the full-blown document like this, could you possibly send us a list of the, just high-level projects that are being considered to be put on this list?
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait another three months before we.
Yeah.
Is that okay with everyone? And that we then sent out?
That's okay. Yeah, is there, I've got a project list at home and some of those things are 22 years old. Do we actually have a?
You're not that old.
Do we actually have a something on the list and the bring forward date and the completion date? That's those sort of columns on it.
Yeah, the point when they come to committee to be considered for funding, yeah, because then they need to be scheduled. We need to work that out. What we are a bit rubbish with at the moment is planning that any further than the year we're in, which I'd really like us to get better at. But yes, is the answer.
What I was asking for, by the way, is just replace, if we just have top line, replace all the notice boards, which is my hobby horse, rather than all that the other detail, which will come later on. Julia?
Just sniffing.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. No, hypersensitive people ready to talk.
No. Thank you.
All right, so that was to note. Item 10, a scheme of delegation. You're up again.
Thank you. The internal audit report made a recommendation that the council adopt a scheme of delegation to provide some transparency in the way that discounted room rates and other discounts are applied. What that would also do is provide officers with a clearer process for doing that. We do keep them to a minimum, but there are times when it's appropriate to offer something for certain bookings. The proposal here is to adopt a scheme which sets out a discount range up to a maximum of 20% for a room hire discount that could be applied, and then only when it meets certain criteria which are listed in the document. Those criteria on page 28, sorry to flip away from the report, but into the scheme itself, just for context. So that 1 to 5 list referring to the overall demand for the facility at the time. So there are some rooms that are underutilised, or it's a slot that no one else is likely to want. Sometimes that's coupled with a particularly easy or no setup whatsoever. So it's literally someone comes in, walks into an empty room and walks back out again a couple of hours later, and they're a really easy win in that sense. Some might have other income elements. We don't have any of those at the moment, but it might be that there's some other income attached to it that's not the room hire that might make it worth considering a discount for, or whether there's wider benefits to the community based on the activity that's happening, or something that's potentially offers a wider promotion of the facility. And those are subjective. There is some discretion in there. I think what that should do is just provide a backdrop for any consideration of a discount. Actually, it's got to be worth doing and meet at least one of those things significantly for that to be considered. Offer some consistency. We've historically had some rates that were not standard rates. Not necessarily any real rationale for why they are. Certainly not one that's been reported back to members, which is the other key thing that actually this would be reported back to this committee. So the principle there is to set a maximum discount level at 20% where the booking meet those criteria. Those rates would be reviewed annually, or if the nature of the booking changes in any way, actually sometimes it goes from weekly to monthly or something and starts to not be as much of a good deal for us. And to report those rates to this committee. And the other proposal there is for officers to review the existing rates which currently fall outside the discounted range. that list is included on page 29. Some of those numbers against the discounted rate look very high. And reason for that is, again, under the nature of the booking, they're generally a time of day that's been very difficult to hire out at any other time, and there's been no setup or.
So they're not paying 72% of the amount.
No, that's the
They're having
discount.
a discount. of 72%.
Yes, yeah.
28% they pay. 28%
Yeah.
they pay.
So the
Hang on a
intention,
sec, Michael.
I was just saying,
Until
the intention with those in terms of review is obviously to, where appropriate, to migrate those back to within the band with the 20%, and where it's considered that it's still worth having a discount that's more than that, that would be considered by this committee as appropriate or otherwise.
Right, so Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we should put our faith in the officers. We've already seen tonight that the income from the bookings at the Opus Centre is up 26.6%. And therefore I would support the recommendations that we give the officers, the scheme of delegation they've requested.
Robert?
A question then. So Jan Richardson Jewellery, 74% discount. How much would room cost?
I don't have that number. Sorry.
So because if obviously you're then going to make, so it's then going to become a 20% discount.
Yeah.
If the room costs 50 quid,
Yeah.
then it's not palatable, an unpalatable amount compared to 500.
Exactly, and that's why, in the context of that review, we need to consider whether a booking would be viable if the cost of it went up that massively, or whether we would just lose that booking completely.
And next.
Just under purposes, you've got a list of reasons for offering a discount, but you don't, you've got 1 to 5, but you don't list block or long-term bookings. But I think that is a reason why you have given big discounts over time.
Yes.
That should be, definitely should, I think, anyway. That ought to be a block booking, you should get discount on.
Right. Okay.
Even more discount if they're paid right up front, 1 year's.
Oh,
Yeah, no, that's an omission. I think that's in there and it's actually fallen out.
Any other questions before I launch into mine? Okay, sorry. Negotiated rates, sorry, not that, no, authorised officers. I think there ought to be at least one councillor involved, maybe the chair of leisure. At least being.
Keith, is it one officer would make a decision? So Matthew could decide, or would Matthew speak to Kevin?
On the basis of the suggestion here, you're talking about the town clerk, myself, the bookings manager, which is Nikki, or Ed, the leisure services manager. So nobody.
But would they do it on their own, all four of you?
They would do, yeah.
Well, as four would make the decision or one?
Oh, no, sorry, individually. Yeah.
Individually.
I'm
just wondering
that could be changed on this basis so that they all come through me, might be a way to do that, or the town clerk.
Or maybe
situation changes.
not to use the councillor as the person who can say no, but informed, so that they
I
know.
think they've said that if it's odd, you vote for us, if it needs to be more. Or
Yeah, a key thing in there is that we do report that back to this committee for transparency.
Oh, frankly, it's not a big amount of money.
No, we rely on our people to spend lots of money anyway, so.
But I think I'd be more worried about those people that are dropping their discount from 70 odd to 20 odd. And whether we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
Cannot do it.
We just do that incrementally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair warning.
Yeah, we have done that some over time where there was some that worked quite right.
So the other question actually leads on from your comments there, is the 20%, I'm sure, is just an arbitrary number. It's been plucked out of thin air.
Not entirely. It does fit with a discounted rate that's offered at the leisure centre in relation to block bookings, as was mentioned earlier.
They're two different facilities.
No, they are. But in terms of a reasonable level of discount for most of our booking types, it was felt that would be.
Because what I was leading on to, and I'll come to you, Beth, in a minute. What I was coming on to is that there are one or two things, you've got your 5 purposes there, but you could I don't want to overcomplicate something, but you could have, for instance, a 10% extra discount if it's an underutilized room. No, there are, which you have as a criteria, but what you're doing here, if I understand it correctly, you just have to satisfy one of those and you get the 20%.
No,
That was you satisfy two or three of them.
No, I think there's going to be judgment in there, and I think that the principle there would be up to a maximum of 20%. So if it met several of those, if it only met one, then it's not likely to get.
Yeah, but I'm thinking
5 or 10.
more than 20%.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going down. If it's underutilized, it doesn't matter what, if you take away discount, as Juliet was talking about, they'll go. And guess what?
They
It's
might
gonna-
not, they might not, I don't know.
Yes, sorry. What we were saying was the ones that are already getting more than that, we would review and talk about any that come up which we think that would fall outside that can come to committee for that decision.
Okay. Because on the review, I think you can't just go 72 to 20 overnight.
No, and we wouldn't do.
You'd have to probably have a 5-year plan or even a
Yeah.
10-year plan.
Yeah.
72 to 60 to 50 or whatever. I'm just concerned this is a bit of a simplistic, but I understand. Beth, you've been waiting.
I'm happy about discounts for various reasons, but what I want to be absolutely clear is that Ian Richardson isn't my nephew's son, or there are no relations here that are using our name to get a discount. That for the public to look, it needs to be absolutely clean. So,
Conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
Now, I would trust our officers.
yeah, absolutely.
Fair.
I think how we would do that in terms of at the point at which a discount is to be applied, rather than it just happen, there needs to be a document behind that, the manager that approves it commits to.
If you've got 5 headings, if you gave every heading 5%, and if somebody met one, you give them 5% off, and if they met all 5, you give them 25% off. Would that be a simpler way of doing it?
Except that if there was one that was worthy of more than that, in so much as it was either such an easy booking, or it was such a wide community benefit that might
Need a number 6, don't we? So discretion other.
If we go, I see where you're coming, because if we go in here, it's 20%.
Mm.
And you've lost that flexibility.
Well, it's up to
20%, subjective. We've just got to let people use their brain.
Professional judgment.
But there's a hard stop at 20%.
If it goes over 20.
Yeah, then it comes back in.
It should be.
It would
more
come.
than
It would
20,
come to committee.
Come to here
Yeah.
for approval.
Okay, because that's not clear.
Oh,
to
okay.
me.
But that was the principle, but that delegation of the 20% of resident officers, beyond that comes back to this committee,
But if-
and that would be reported.
Right, that then becomes a timing issue. Because if somebody's looking for a booking, they're not going to, and they've just missed a SNR meeting, they're not going to turn around and say, okay, I'm quite happy to wait 3 months before. No, but there needs to be a built-in mechanism somehow to consult or whatever.
It's simple to build that in. You just then have 2 members of the SNR committee can agree that. So Kevin could phone up me and Darren and say, this is the thing you agree. Yes. And then
I'm sure there's ways around it, but I think what we're all trying to do is just highlight, making this even stronger and squeezing out any loopholes.
I think if it was any wider, than check it almost wouldn't be worth having because you'd be saying, actually, you're delegated to agree as much as you like. That makes sense. And the principle was that there was a limit on it, and that anything over that would be.
You're doing this now.
Yeah.
You're doing it up to 74%. So by making it 20, it's making it better. It's making it stricter, it's bringing it down. We're going to earn more money. I can't see anything wrong with this because you're doing it now.
Now, I'm just talking about the immediacy of something that might be 25% or even 21%. That this committee needs to be involved in that. And you can't wait the 3 months if you've just missed. So there's plenty of mechanisms where we can by email or.
But why would you give more than 20%? If 20% is our maximum discount, 20% is our maximum discount.
Can I just say that actually, when we look at these big percentages that are offered currently, 40% is you know, a lot of them are hovering around the 40% mark. And I'm just thinking, there's a reason why they've been given this discount. And is it worth just thinking about what that reason was?
Well, it says here, under the main,
I know it does say that.
underutilisation.
But I mean, it was obviously, it was felt worth giving them a discount of something like 40%. And so I'm just suggesting, could that be another standard for, you know, these cases where it must be felt that it's worth offering that?
Just to note that some of those rates, I mean, they are all to be reviewed, so some of those might not be considered to be particularly appropriate at this point. So
Oh,
they might
really?
change.
So you think they're really quite pissed off with it?
Yeah, there's some older ones in there that, and the nature of the bookings have changed as well over time, and the rate has stayed the same.
And I don't think we've got a leg to stand on. I'd be pretty pissed off if I was Woodley Photographic and found out that Libra Chiropractic were getting that sort of discount. So
We know that because this is a public document.
well, no, it's just a public document, but you know, I think having a set amount is much more sensible. I'm sure some of these are really historic, aren't
They are, yeah.
they? I need reviewing them.
Well,
Yeah.
there is another dynamic you could do. It's just, don't worry about them, just let them run and we just do the 20% going forward.
Yep.
That way you don't piss them off, you keep the rooms being used. The financial impact of this, we don't know.
You're going to review it anyway.
I think what we're saying is, yeah, that we would review those anyway, because perhaps some of those, the nature of the bookings have changed and are not necessarily appropriate at this
Yeah.
time. But we're not going to just change all of those overnight. We need to talk to them.
But going
We want
back,
to keep our customers.
sorry to keep harping on, but going back to the ones that you talk about would come here to this committee, we need to find a relatively rapid way of doing that, because people booking will not wait 3 months to have a decision, because they'll go down the church wall.
I've got suggestions, very sensible, a couple of people just responsible for the viewing, it takes 2 minutes and then email.
I mean, that could be included into here if you were happy with, say, the chair and.
Well, I was actually going to say not the chair, or the deputy chair to actually make a late, you know, one of you guys, a late member. Because then that takes.
It's like a check signature, isn't it? You know, it's,
So I'm more than happy to say that it would be 2 members, excluding the chair and vice chair of this committee makes the decision.
I think it needs to just be anybody because somebody might be on holiday or so any 2 members.
Hold that thought, because
Yeah, I don't mind.
I'll do it, there you go, done.
I was going to say you've got 3 political parties, so, you know, can we not, I'm not saying you would, but are you comfortable for Juliet to be one and Beth the other, say, for instance? Yeah? Majid, I'm looking at you because you're the leader of the Labour group. Are you comfortable with that? You're fine, okay. Right. Oh, and then we've still got another one.
It's still Tuesday.
It still is.
We're nearly there. Item B, free hire requests. Haven't got anything on this, have we?
No, so
Can I make a suggestion? We just note this and defer it to the next meeting? And come up with a proposal?
yes, I mean, we did have a system. It just seemed to have changed at the last meeting.
Didn't
We
we?
adopted a different system.
I was going to say, we've done this before, we pushed this down the line before.
Several years ago, and I can't remember the minute, I found it a few years ago, it was free, I think in 2019 almost.
Yeah.
When a request came in, and was agreed separately that for future, any request for free hire would come to this committee and the committee would simply consider it and make a decision. But over the last 18 months, we've had 3, and as they come here, each time the committee have raised concerns about that process, and not that this committee
So
agreed.
can you just come, we all agreed, we'll defer it and we'll have a report at the next SNR.
Yeah.
Okay, make that one. Climate emergency action plan update. I noticed there's no paperwork.
There isn't, so just a very brief verbal update. There's a couple of things we have managed to do, which is the new waste contract that's in place, and we're having a push on increasing the level of recycling both here. changes from landfill to recycling. And the capital projects we mentioned earlier on, a couple of those to do with the heating systems, things. So we are obviously investigating the environmental aspects of those before we bring something forward to council to consider funding. So there's a lot more to that than there used to be in the good old days.
Okay, so we do need, in future, we do need a written report, please, for us. There is a climate emergency subcommittee, is it, or is it? It is a subcommittee. That was set up right at the beginning when we were obviously declaring a climate emergency and having an action plan, etc. I think that worked very, very well. We've got a very good action plan, and it's, as you hear, it's happening all the time, updated and modified. It hasn't met for 9 months.
No,
The climate,
yeah.
at least 9 months, which reflects the fact that it's been migrated from that subcommittee to here. It was a subcommittee underneath this committee, but this committee now has been taking more and more of the work that was happening, which is really on a monitoring basis here. So from my perspective, and I'm going to put it to a vote, that committee now is really surplus to requirement. We can always set it up again afterwards. So I have a proposal that we shut down that subcommittee on the basis of this committee now is taking on more of the monitoring, more of the reviewing, etc. And it should do, because we're a higher committee than a subcommittee. Has anybody got any problems with that approach? No? No? No?
Yeah, well, I am a bit concerned that if there's a specific issue, it would be easier for a subcommittee to, really look at it thoroughly.
If there's a specific issue, then it becomes an agenda item.
I suppose, I think I made this by some other means, that when it comes to being more proactive with the whole matter, maybe a subcommittee would be a bit better at picking things up.
But
And
the history suggests not.
right.
No.
If the committee never meets, then it'll never.
Mainly because the committee were often thinking, hang on a minute, we're discussing all the things that's going to be discussed again here. And I think this is a more appropriate committee to discuss because of the nature of climate emergency, the importance of climate emergency. I could even push it and say full council should be doing it. I don't think we have that opportunity.
Can I just add something, Chair, into the mix in terms of the working parties over certainly the sort of last 6 months or so. There are some that didn't meet that were scheduled to meet. So we have got an ongoing capacity issue to keep managing those meetings. So I just want to mention that has been in the mix in terms of some of those working parties not meeting.
So if we go down what I'm suggesting, the point you make, Anne, is well made. So if you've got, anybody's got any ideas, any councillor's got any ideas about a future action within climate, then feed it in to Kevin for the next meeting. Julia.
I'm going to suggest that maybe twice a year or something, we put it as a standing item on the agenda.
Well, it is a standing item now, every meeting. That's another reason for. Okay, I think that we better for all those agree. Yes, please.
That's 8.
Abstention. Okay. Future agenda items, we've got climate emergency ones. Publicity website now. Then I'm afraid, Michael, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Okay, to resolve that in line with Standing Order 12.2, in view of the confidential nature of the business about to be transacted in relation to legal matters, it is advisable in the public interest that the public and press are temporarily excluded and they are asked to withdraw for item 15 on the agenda.
I don't know what's happening anymore, but I don't know what's happening. It's interesting, I just would like to know.
We're looking. We'll look into that. Good to see you.
Do we need to vote?
Oh, we need to